Do you know that suicide is the third leading killer of black men between the ages of 15 and 24? Did you know that black men are less likely than any other group of men to go to seek, visit, or even inquire about mental health or counseling? Part of that could be attributed to somewhere between 4 to 5% of licensed clinicians, psychologists, therapists, that entire genre of effective mental health workers being black. And that's not even going into the fall off of that number when it comes to black male. Now, then you could get into straight, Christian, Muslim, ones who specialize in family, ones who specialize in grief. The number grows smaller and smaller and smaller. My name is Augustus C. Foster. It's the Man Talk Monday podcast, the standard mental health. Now, at the time of this recording, it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. For some of you, I'm glad I just made you aware because, quite honestly, it's not really a topic. This month, there's a handful of things. There's your graduations, there's your promotions. It's the summer for most people. The most promoted thing this month will likely be Pride Month. Behind that, in a close second, likely won't be Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. More than likely to be Juneteenth, which, as a black dude with roots in America for hundreds of years since slavery, I'm all about. But in my opinion, the one that should be paid the closest attention to is the latter. You see, there's this idea, this concept, this whatever you would want to label it as, theory, whatever, that we, specifically, I will say black men, super tough, super strong. Dr. Tommy Curry and Dr. T. Hassan Johnson and a number of other uh, black men in the academic field. There's this theory that's out there that they refer to as the John Henry theory. And if you know the story of John Henry, he was a steel driving man. And this is real, as kids, as youth, we thought it was a really cool story. You go back to Disney in their early years. We're not going to talk everything Disney in their early years because, hey, history's pretty raw. But they would do the cartoon of John Henry, the steel driving man, and he was out and he was racing against this locomotive, and he could beat it because he just was just so strong. And somewhere along the lines, that concept has carried specifically for black men, that we are stronger, that we are, more muscular, more durable. And there are some people who will totally agree with it. And there are others like myself who go, yeah, partially it's true. Now, if you're a black woman watching this, you may think, well, what does this have to do with me? Well, it also has to do with you because even though this is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm talking specifically about black men, you as a black woman also should take into account for this because these same tropes that are attached and associated with black men being extra strong, extra powerful, extra durable, being able to make it through, being able to do more arduous tasks, these things, regardless of how people view currently black women in society, with your education, your success, whatever it is that you think it is, it falls back to the idea of, I tell people I love numbers, and I look at the statistics of the amount of black women who die on the birthing table in the midst of labor and how it's exponentially larger than that of any of their white, Latin, Spanish speaking, and or Asian counterparts. The number increases by a lot. And part of that is the same tropes are attached to you. They're stronger in birth. They're tougher. They can do this. And it costs black women lives. Now, with respect to black women dying in the midst of birth because of this myth that they're just so strong, they could do it. Now, attach that to the larger number of black men who take their own lives for a litany of reasons. Now, expand that to the white men, extend it to Asian, Latin, etc. These numbers are large because when you look outside of Black men, then it's Latin men, then it's white men, because we don't go to therapy. We don't check in. They constantly do studies. There's the conversation now on the loneliness epidemic of men because men just have such casual relationships. The jokes that they have where dudes can walk down the street, see a guy 4 or 5 times. Now they're friends. Now they're not authentically real, invite you to my wedding friends, but they have a casual, cool relationship. But that speaks to the loneliness epidemic. It's not a real, authentic, rooted in like a love, sacrifice, man, I got you type of friendship. It's just a I know dude from work, which now all of these figures, all of these facts, all this background I'll give you, it's time for you as the dads or the moms who are listening to do what I've asked you all to do in this series. What is your standard? In your house, what is the standard for mental health? Now, for me, I grew up in a house where mental health wasn't really discussed explicitly. Let me clear that up. Now, there were conversations about it, but we didn't attach the word mental health. See, I was raised in a household, two loving parents, middle class. I chose the problems that I chose when I ran into my issues, and thank God the blood covers. Um, but also, I had really great people around me who were not involved in certain lifestyles or affiliations that kept me out. And then being honest, I had other people who were involved in certain lifestyles, affiliations, and activities who made sure that I didn't stick around too long. And those things and prayers really preserved my life to this day. Now, I say that to say, in those moments back in this day, in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was growing up, like how to move, how to do certain things. These were the conversations. Hey man, read the room. How do you do this? How would you? Everything was a how to in your approach. Now we would label those things as emotional intelligence, knowing when to speak, when not to speak, how to approach, how not to approach, paying attention to your audience, knowing who you're speaking to. Now, these were conversations I had with my mother and father where it wasn't tabbed as emotional intelligence, but we got it. When I was getting suspended and kicked out of schools, it wasn't necessarily a mental health question, but it would be my parents asking me not just how I felt, but what do you think? How do you feel? What do you think? Them really giving me in-depth questions instead of just pointing the finger. Now, of course, there was some discipline with it, but they asked questions. They were curious to know what was going on with their son. So that was my standard. Always had, even if it wasn't clear, here's your counselor, here's your therapist, here's your mental health professional. No, but I always had people around who asked me the right questions that created a response they needed to hear to continue to ask the right questions, to keep me on the right path. Now, that was me, young, 90s, early 2000s, being asked those questions where, be quite honest, most people's parents, depending if your dad is my dad's age, we come from an era where those dudes didn't have those discussions. That wasn't their standard. They didn't talk about feelings. Hell, I had homeboys who grew up who their fathers never asked them how they felt. And if they told their fathers how they felt, likely they were called gay because that was their standard. As horrible of a standard it is, it's what it was. Now we've moved forward in time to where we're trying to break that. There are a lot of conversations around normalizing mental health. Well, this isn't one of those conversations. It's not a push to normalize conversations in mental health. See, where it gets misconstrued is for you to say normalize something that makes that thing abnormal, that makes it irregular. So no, I don't want to push for a conversation to normalize mental health being of importance and wellness being something that you really take seriously in your household. No. I don't want to normalize it. I want it to be part of your standard. I don't want it to be irregular or abnormal. I want this to be something that you implement in your kids seamlessly, not forced, that it comes in casual conversations. so that it doesn't have to be normalized. It's just normal. See, we don't have conversations about mental health for a litany of reasons. Like I said, the John Henry theory spoke about by Black academics. You have the lack of men in the field, whether they be white, Asian, or otherwise. You could have, again, more to the breakdown. Do you want a Christian therapist? Do you want a Muslim? Do you want a gay one? Do you want a straight one? And there's all of these factors. And at the root, the issue is that man needs help. Remove everything else. That man needs help. So now in your household, as I wrap this up, that's what I want you to do. And again, before you do it for your kids, specifically for the fathers, before you do it for your sons, think, do you need help? And are you honest enough? Are you vulnerable enough to admit that you need help? See, part of that so important, because on the real, if you can't admit that you need help, if you can't admit that there might be some wellness or some well-being or some mental health tools that you could apply to your life to help you live a better life, if you can't admit that, it's going to be virtually impossible for you to coach your kid on it. You see, kids could care less about what you say. And every parent watching this knows this. Talking to you, parents, your kid doesn't care what you say. You could tell them to do their homework. You could tell them to finish it all you want. You could tell them to read every night. They never see you reading. They never see you do work at home. They never see you complete or finish a task. You can yell and scream to the top of your lungs about how you want them to do better. But in every single aspect of your life, you don't do better. Now, right now, I'm talking about work and completing things and tasks, physical labor. Now, you expect for your kid to pick up what you're putting down with respect to their mental health when they're watching you stressed, lack sleep, use the bottle or weed or something else as a coping mechanism instead of being really man enough, really woman enough, since we're here and you're watching, to actually admit, I need help. And not the kind of help where you're just looking for sympathy, not the kind of help where you're doing these people who set up a tripod and they're filming their pain. No. Not that. I mean, actual real, if I don't get this, it might go bad kind of help. How many of you are doing that and being honest to tell your kids, I hit a bump in the road and Lord knows I couldn't get over it. But God is great. He laid this out for me. He introduced these concepts. How many of you are doing that? Not enough. Listen, this series is designed for you not just to throw a bunch of strategies and necessarily add tools to your toolbox, but it's for you to really ask yourself the question, what is the standard for every one of these topics? So in this, something as vital as your mental health, something as important as your kids seeing how you handle emotional stress, something that is so real as your kids seeing you cry and be resilient and seeking real help to get you through, something as real as your child seeing you down, you, me as a Christian, picking up my Bible and going to the Word of God for the answer. All of these things are so real, but they're my standard. There's other standards. This is what I do when this thing hits me hard mentally. This is my emotional intelligence. What are you doing with that? What is your standard for it? Do you show the resilience? Do you show the stick-to-itiveness? Do you bounce back? Or do you respond in a way when it comes to the difficulties and stresses of mental health that's so unhealthy that years down the line it's repeated, that those habits grab a hold of your child? Do you not have a standard in your home about mental health to where your kids are uncomfortable with telling you how they really feel? that they don't have the mindset that you're their safe space? Is the standard for mental health in your house so low that everyone would much rather walk on eggshells than to have a conversation? These are the questions. You have the answers. As always, man, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for listening to this episode of the series. Looking forward to doing more of these. And may God bless you. May He keep you. Check on your mental health. Don't check on your strong friends. Check on all your friends. Love y'all. Y'all be well. Peace.